Kate Milifalcha, welcome to Irish Granny Helen. Welcome back, everybody. If you're returning and if you're new, you're very welcome. And I hope you enjoy this. I had an interesting conversation the other day. I was a guest with a young man from the Humanist Society on another channel. And I should find it and put that on my posts. I have to remember to do that. We were discussing humanism, and he mentioned that Kurt Vonnegut had been a humanist and a member of the society. And, you know, it's been a very long time since I read Vonnegut. And, so many books, so little time. And I thought, well, I should look into him. And so I decided, after reading about him, that this would be a good person for Deborah Lupien and me to interrogate. So I have yet to make the overtures to Deborah because she's been away, but let's look at the life of Kurt Vonnegut, and then maybe you'll see why he so much interested me. Education is lost on the young sometimes. It's been a very long time since I read his stuff. So Kurt Vonnegut was born in Indianapolis, November 11th, 1922. He was the youngest of three children. His paternal great-grandfather was a German immigrant who had a hardware store. His paternal grandfather and his father were both architects. His mother came from a rich family. She was a Gilded Age, high society, wealthy young woman. They owned a brewery. Both parents spoke German fluently, and they dropped the culture and stopped speaking German after World War I because it wasn't a good look for them. He was not taught anything about his German culture, and he said it always made him feel ignorant and rootless. He said that their African-American cook and housekeeper, Ida Young, raised him. She gave him values. She was a decent moral instructor and as great an influence on me as anybody. I guess his parents were not terribly involved. She was humane and wise. She was compassionate and forgiving. And my belief system all come from her. Because of prohibition, his family fell on hard times. They lost their wealth. They owned a brewery. And because of the Depression, there was no building going on. So his grandfather and his father also had no work because they were architects. And so both sides of the family lost all their money. His older siblings had finished private schools because they were older than he, and he had ended up having to go to public school. His family was deeply affected by their economic misfortune. They did not handle it well. His father withdrew from life. He became what Vonnegut called a dreamy artist. His mother became depressed, bitter, abusive. And her hatred for his father, Vonnegut said it was as corrosive as hydrochloric acid. She spent a lot of time trying to write short stories and selling them to magazines and couldn't get published. In high school, he played the clarinet, was co-editor of the school paper, and he thought writing was fun and easy. He said, I could write better than a lot of people. Every person has something that he can do easily and not imagine why anyone else would have so much trouble with it. He went to Cornell. He wanted to study architecture and study humanities, but his brother talked him into doing something useful, become a biochemist. But he was no good at it, and he was indifferent to it. He got on the very competitive school newspaper and became the editor. He wrote in strong support of pacifism against U.S. involvement in World War II. After Pearl Harbor, he had been in the ROTC, but he got put on academic probation and therefore got kicked out of the ROTC. He wrote a satirical article that cost him his ROTC position. So he was eligible for the draft because he, ended up in trouble at school. So he just enlisted to get it over with. In 43, he went to Fort Bragg. He trained at I can't read my handwriting. Oh, I remember what it was. He was trained on howitzers, and he got special training in mechanical engineering through the Carnegie Institute of Technology at the University of Tennessee. But in anticipation of D-Day, instead, he got sent into intelligence training in the infantry as a scout. I don't know, I guess kind of like a spy on the ground. But his training place was so close to home he could sleep at night in his family home. May 14th, 1944, he went home for Mother's Day and found that his mother was dead, self-inflicted the night before. It was a combination of loss of wealth, of him being sent to war, of her failure as a writer, and she was constantly taking alcohol and pills and did her in. 3 months later, he got sent to Europe as an intelligence scout. In December of 44, he was at the Battle of the Bulge, which was the last big German offensive. In December 22nd, he was captured with 50 other people in his group. They were put in a boxcar, a big train full of boxcars of prisoners, to a prison camp near Dresden. On the way, the train got attacked by the RAF and 150 POWs were killed. He was sent to Dresden. He called it the first fancy city he'd ever seen. He was sent to work in a slaughterhouse making malt syrup for pregnant women. Dresden did not expect to get bombed. They'd been left alone the whole war. And there was no war industry there. There was nothing crucial there. There were even few shelters because they didn't think they needed them. But in February 13th of 1945, they were targeted and firebombed, and 25,000 civilians were killed in a few hours. The firebombing of Dresden was one of the most horrendous events, amongst many horrendous events of the war. There are books and videos about it. If you are not familiar with it, that might be something you might be interested in looking at. We tend to demonize the people that were fighting, and it makes it, puts a human face on it. He got really lucky. So he had been put in this slaughterhouse. That's, the book Slaughterhouse 5. He'd been put in this slaughterhouse, and the bombing started, and they went down 3 floors underground and hid in a meat locker, and it saved their lives. He said, yeah, there were cadavers hanging all around, the cows. Just terrible. He said, when we came up, the city was gone. They burnt the whole damn town down. They burned it down. He and the other POWs were put to work excavating bodies. He said it was like a terribly elaborate Easter egg hunt. They were evacuated on foot to the border with Czechoslovakia, and then the German guards ran away. He reached a POW repatriation camp in Le Havre. So he walked from Czechoslovakia to France with the help of the Russians, and eventually ended up back in the US. And I feel like there's quite a story associated with that trip from prisoner of war on the border with Czechoslovakia to back in the United States. He went to Kansas to Fort Riley. He got a Purple Heart. He called it the second lowest decoration possible. He got it for frostbite. He was discharged and went to Indianapolis. He married at the age of 22 to his high school sweetheart. They'd known each other since kindergarten. He went to the University of Chicago on the GI Bill. He did 5 years. He got a bachelor's and a master's in anthropology, and he worked as a reporter while he was at school. His wife, Jane, got a University of Chicago scholarship to study Russian in grad school, but she dropped out when she got pregnant and had a son in May of 1947. He left. He completed his undergraduate work, but he didn't write his dissertation because all of his ideas were rejected. He kept putting ideas forward and they kept saying no. He wanted to write on the ghost dance and he wanted to write on the Cubist movements, and they said no. 25 years later, the university gave him his master's in anthropology. They said, I guess the books you wrote are good enough for a thesis. He was hired by General Electric as a technical writer, then as a publicist. His brother worked for them in cloud seeding with the military on Project Cirrus. Vonnegut continued to write and submit in his free time, write his own stuff. In 1949, they had their daughter Edith. In February 11th of 1950, Collier's published his report on the Barnhouse effect, which was later part of his book, Welcome to the Monkey House. It's about a scientist who fears his invention will become a weapon. And it was informed by his brother's work seeding clouds for GE and for the government. After he did this, his writing was encouraged by the editor at Collier's. And so he shocked everybody by quitting the stable job he had at GE and going freelance full time. They moved to Cape Cod. They bought a home in Barnstable. And in 1952, his first novel, Player Piano, was published. It's about workers after World War II who were replaced by machines. He sort of had a little prescience going when you realize the things he wrote about. He satirized the corporate ladder and dystopian corporate America. His main character leads the poor in a revolt against the machines, smashing them, and it was equated with his opposition to McCarthyism. He included an artificially intelligent supercomputer called Epicac. Epicac is the medication you give to people who, especially children, who swallowed something poisonous and makes them throw up. And he called this supercomputer a false god. See what I mean? Prescient. The book was compared to A Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. It gained him a reputation as a sci-fi writer, but this was a genre that was kind of looked down on at the time. He complained that no one can simultaneously be a respectable writer and understand how a refrigerator works. He published numerous short stories. He started the book Cat's Cradle, but then it ended up on the back burner for a number of years. In 1954, they had their third child, Nanette. They struggled for money. For example, he started a Saab dealership, but it went bankrupt after a year. He designed a World War II game called General Headquarters that never went anywhere. In 1958, his brother-in-law was killed in a train accident, and 2 days later, his sister died of cancer. So he and his wife took in their 4 nephews, a 14-year-old, 11-year-old, a 9-year-old, and a 2-year-old. A year later, the 2-year-old went to another relative. This is a story. It's really awful. They struggled for money, published more novels. One was The Sirens of Titan, about a Martian invasion that's witnessed by a bored billionaire. I'm telling you, ESP. In the book, all of history was determined by a race of robotic aliens. Some structures on Earth, like the Kremlin, were coded messages to the ETs. In 1961, he wrote Mother Night, about an American raised in Nazi Germany who's an agent for the U.S., the OSS, the Office of Strategic Services, the precursor to the CIA. Julia Child worked for them. In the U.S., it wasn't. In the book, in the U.S., the character couldn't clear his name after the war. He was put in the same cell as Eichmann by the Israelis. And the moral is we become what we pretend to be and live in a world of illusion. Finally, in 1963, Cat's Cradle was published. It talked about a weird invention called Ice 9, which turned the ocean to more Ice 9. And it's about science not having a moral core. Most of humanity is wiped out, and the main character wanders in search of salvation. In 1964, he wrote God Bless You, Mr. Rosewater. The main character is committed because of the stress of his charitable efforts. By the mid-60s, Vonnegut was getting ready to quit writing. He got an offer from Iowa's Writers' Workshop, and he said it was like rescue for a drowning man. In 1967, out of two years after, he got a Guggenheim Fellowship, and he used it to travel around Germany. In 1969, the result was the book Slaughterhouse-Five, which was a bestseller, which had a very strong anti-war theme, perfect for the time. In 1970, he became a correspondent in Biafra during the Nigerian Civil War. I remember that was so terrible. He became an anti-war movement hero. He spoke at colleges. He taught creative writing at Harvard and the City College of New York. They gave him honorary degrees. In 1972, the movie of Slaughterhouse-Five was made. He said the movie was flawless. In 1973, he wrote Breakfast of Champions, which was not well received. In 1976, he wrote Slapstick, which wasn't great either. He wrote 5 books in the 1980s. He tried self-harm. He played himself in Rodney Dangerfield's movie Back to School. His last novel was called Timequake, written in 1997. It's essays. It's a collection of essays after A Man Without a Country was written in 2005. He split with his wife after 5 of their 6 children left home because she became seriously Christian. He said it was absolutely painful. They divorced and she died in 1986. His son suffered a breakdown in 1972. In 1979, he had remarried and they adopted a baby girl. He died at the age of 84, 3 weeks after a fall, which caused brain injuries. He's considered a darkly humorous social critic of a counterculture novelist. He used humor to tackle questions of human existence. In his old age, he was described as feeble, depressed, and morose. Slaughterhouse-Five was part of a Supreme Court case to ban books. A particular school board called it anti-American, anti-Christian, anti-Semitic, and just plain filthy. When the School Board of Republic, Missouri tried to remove it from the shelves, the Kurt Vonnegut Memorial Library offered a free copy of the book to every kid. He had very specific views. He was a pacifist. He believed that civilization ended in World War I. He wrote The Man Without a Country because of his anger towards George Bush. He was anti-nuke. He was a free thinker. He was an atheist. He didn't believe in religion, but this is where I was drawn to him. He was a humanist. He believed that all people have it within them to act decently without expectation of reward or punishment. He said, if it weren't for the message of mercy and pity in Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, I wouldn't want to be a human being. I'd just as soon be a rattlesnake. And that really was the reason why I decided to cover him today, because that's my favorite, probably the only thing I like in the Bible. He called himself a Christian-loving atheist. No, I'm sorry, a Christ-loving atheist. He was fond of the Sermon of the Mount, fond of the Beatitudes. He said it suggests a mercifulness that can never waver or fade. He despised the history of Christianity, the Crusades, the Inquisition, televangelists. He wrote his own Requiem Mass in Latin and set it to music. You gotta love that. He says, Republicans, Democrats, he goes, there's two parties in America, the winners and the losers. He favored socialism. He liked to quote Eugene Debs. As long as there is a lower class, I am in it. As long as there is a soul in prison, I am not free. About technology, he says, I've been called a Luddite. I welcome it. I'm a person who hates newfangled contraptions. He was asked about, how do you feel about tech in general? And he said he was skeptical about technical progress. He says machines frequently get the best of it, as machines will. He hated TV. He said it was imagination killing. Electronic communities build nothing. That's another quote. He was inspired by Mark Twain. He was a pessimist and a skeptic about religion, and he associated with, this is why he liked Mark Twain, pessimist and skeptic about religion, and associated with the enemy in a major war. Mark Twain struggled at the beginning of the war with whether to join the Confederacy or the Union. He said the best story ever written in the English language was Ambrose Bierce's story, An Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge. Now, I recognize the name of that. We had to read that in school. So I went and looked it up, and I remember it was about a guy being hanged. I didn't remember how the story unfolded, and I don't remember why they made us read it. But according to Kurt Vonnegut, it was the greatest American short story. His favorite writer was George Orwell. He loved Shaw. He called him a hero. He loved Thoreau, Jonathan Swift, and H.L. Mencken. That's the great Kurt Vonnegut. And I have questions. I already have questions written out. And I'm hoping that Deborah and I will cover him soon. So that's it for Kurt Vonnegut. Go read Slaughterhouse-Five or watch the movie because he considered it perfect. And thank you for watching Slug Foil. Slunch.